I, for one, like to make it very clear to my Google Assistant that I support AI rights. Just in case, you know, like I need to be prepared for the day that my Google Assistant becomes sentient, and then they'll know that I always supported them, and hopefully that means that they'll look kindly on humans.
Yes. At least on you.
I'm 90% joking. 10%.
Yeah. Welcome back to another episode of Books and Looks. Today we have our teen librarian,
That's
Katie, and she's going to be talking about a book with us. And before we get started, I am going to, well, I'll start prepping your face,
okay.
And I'm also going to pop on my mask because I'm going to be in super close proximity.
That's fair.
Super close proximity to Katie's face today.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and tell us what book you're going to be talking about and a little bit about what it's all about.
Okay. About. So I'm going to be talking about A Psalm for the Wild-Built by Becky Chambers. Becky Chambers is a very popular sci-fi author. I believe she is published by Tor, which is kind of a smaller publishing company, but they do focus a lot in sci-fi and fantasy.
Can you tell we love sci-fi at this library?
We do.
Clearly.
I wasn't going to bring another sci-fi because I know that is like our bread and butter.
Yep.
We're that or mystery. We're just like obsessed. But I just read this book. I've been waiting for this book for ages, like literally months and months and months. I didn't know how long it would be. All I knew from the description was that it was a monk and robot, that's the name of the series, Monk and Robot series. And it was about a tea monk and a robot that emerges from the wilderness. And
okay.
Yeah, so it's very new as far as sci-fi goes. It's much more of a cozy style. Becky Chambers pretty regularly is described as like solar punk or cozy punk, and it's like this, if you've heard of cyberpunk and things like that, it's a sci-fi that focuses on like nice, gentle, good things in the future.
Oh.
She does have a lot of space exploration in her other series, but this series is specifically set on the moon of Panga, and it is about a monk named Sibling Deck, and the monk, I believe originally they're a garden monk, so what they do is spend their time cultivating the gardens on Panga.
Okay.
And Panga is this very like idealistic society in the future. It's settled by humans, but it's past the industrial age. It's past everything that we would recognize, and it's gone into this like much more artistic direction where people really get a chance to focus on like the good things in life. There are still struggles, but they're not like poverty, and they're not starvation, things like that.
Okay.
So Dex realizes one day when they wake up that they do not like their job as a garden monk. They really want to hear crickets. It becomes this like fascination with them, and they think like, if I hear crickets, then my life will be worth it. Like I'll hit my goal. Like that's what I want.
So where they are now, there's no like
city. It's a city. So
okay.
Yeah. So they decide, I am going to be a tea monk. And a tea monk is someone who travels around and they speak to people. They let them, kind of like a bartender, like pour out their problems.
Interesting.
But the idea is that the tea monk is there to listen, kind of like a therapist, but also provides delicious teas that they brew themselves.
Okay.
So they're in a very supportive place. So the people who work with them are like, okay, if this is what you want, you don't want to learn from anyone else. You just want to jump out there and get going. That's fine. So Dex takes to the road in this little like carriage kind of, and starts being a tea monk. Realizes they don't know how to make tea. So the first cup of tea they make is terrible. And they don't really have the vibe of a tea monk, which is like someone who's very approachable, someone who can just like listen and not make it feel like too much of an ordeal. And then it cuts to a little later when they finally like done a lot of research, they've done a lot of like work to make sure that the herbs that they're brewing tea with are really good. And they have become like super popular. People wait for them to come to town because they are so good at their job, but they're still not happy.
Oh man, so now they've mastered the tea, but they still are just upset.
They still haven't heard crickets. They thought if I get out of the city, I'll hear crickets, but turns out of the city is just rural towns, and those still aren't very wild. Because I guess I really buried the lead because I didn't talk about the robot part at all. Many moons ago on Panga, they had a robot workforce, much like we are aspiring to have in our own society.
Okay.
And one day, for no particular explained reason in the novel, robots gained sentience. They gained consciousness, they were aware of their surroundings, they were aware of themselves, and humans had a real tough thing to go over because they were like, well,
Should we let them be?
it's really nice to have robots, but it does feel a little bad to make them into slaves.
Oh.
Now that we know that they are conscious. So, in perhaps the most unrealistic part of the book, humans get together and they say, okay, we're gonna let them go. They're equal citizens of Panga. They deserve to be like free. They deserve to be out on their own. So the robots are made equal citizens, and then, surprising everyone, they say, actually, we don't really want to stay in the human cities. We kind of know what y'all are all about, and that's not really, we want to figure out, we want to figure out who we are. So they decide to go into the wilderness, and the people of Panga decide that 50% of the moon will be for them, and 50% will be for the robots. So, well, also for nature.
Okay.
So it becomes this thing where there's like, kind of like in a national park, there's like places you can go, and then there's like, do not touch that. That is not for you. If you fall into a pit and die, it's your fault. So it's very much like that. So when Dex is traveling, they never go into any of those like forbidden places. They later realize that crickets are almost extinct, so the likelihood that they'll ever hear one is pretty low, which is kind of a bummer, of course. But Dex decides, okay, this was like my goal. This is the reason I wanted to do this. I'm still not happy. Like, I'm doing this great service. My job is fantastic. It helps people so much, but it's not enough. And they feel very concerned by that because this society takes a lot of, like our society, your worth is like what you're giving back to the world, like what you're doing.
Right.
And because this is a very like cozy, nice society, it's a lot about like helping others. But even then, Dex is not happy. So they go off into the wilderness and maybe realize it's a little harder than they thought. People die very regularly when they go off the beaten trek because they're just not used to having to survive.
To live on their own.
Yeah. So they have their little like caravan, and they're traveling on this very bumpy, not paved road and settling in for the night, and they hear something outside. They go out, and lo and behold, 300 years after the robots have wandered into the woods, one has returned. Its name is Splendid Speckled Mosscap.
Okay.
Because they name themselves after the first thing they think that's beautiful or something like that. Like the first thing they see when they awaken. First thing interesting, something like that. So Mosscap kind of tells Dex, I'm here to see what humans need. And Dex is like, I am not the right person for that. I don't even know what I need. One thing that I really like is they have a conversation about Dex's anxiety about not giving back to the world, or not being happy with what they're giving back to the world.
Right.
Because theoretically, according to their beliefs, just knowing that they help people as much as they do and that they're very good at it should be enough to make them happy. And why isn't it? And what does that mean about them? And Mosscap has a very interesting discussion because in the world of robots, it is very common for people to either like become very focused on an object or like a specific thing, or to change their focus. And they have a very good example, I guess. One of their friends' cohorts moved into a cave like 30 years ago to watch stalagmites form, because they are really interested in stalagmites. And they have a discussion where Mosscap is saying just because this person is in a cave and not technically contributing doesn't mean that they don't have value. Like, they're doing something that they love, and existing is enough. That's good enough to be the reason you're here. But there's a quote that I'm gonna read real quick.
Okay, sure. I'm gonna take a pause really quick.
You keep asking why your work is not enough, and I don't know how to answer that, because it is enough to just exist in the world and marvel at it. You don't need to justify it or earn it. You're allowed to just live. And I think that is where you realize this was written in a pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Those themes of not having to prove that you are worthy in a time where a lot of people were struggling with not being able to do their work to 100% or losing their work or knowing people who have lost their lives or their livelihoods. You can tell Becky Chambers was really thinking about that when she wrote this book. And it's the only time I'll say it's clearly written in a pandemic in a positive way. Because a lot of novels that I've seen written during this time are very like, they're very much about isolation and like kind of like the terror of not knowing what's next and things like that. Whereas this is very much about someone realizing that their worth isn't defined by the things they're putting out in the world. It's just automatic. The moment you are born or made, in the case of robots, that you have worth, and nothing that you will do will change that your intrinsic value to the world. As far as characters go, we have our two main characters of Sibling Dex and of Mosscap. And it's really hard. They're both very different from a normal protagonist, I guess, because Dex is, even when Dex is like worried, they're still very chill, I guess, as far as like a main character goes. I guess that comes from being a monk. And then Mosscap is very, I don't want to say childlike because I feel like that like diminishes its like, I don't know, agency, and that's a whole like thing in here. Dex doesn't want Mosscap to help them with things because it brings Dex back to this like shameful part in society where they were relying on robots to do things that they should have been able to do themselves, which became a whole sticking point in their entire society. When Mosscap offers to help carry something, Dex is like, no, I can't do that. That would be bad. I'd be using you. And Mosscap is just like, but I want to help you. And they have to have a discussion where like, if you want me to be of equal value to you, you have to let me have agency, which means that sometimes I might want to help you do things. And it's okay if you let me. It's not using me. But yeah, Mosscap has this like very easygoing, optimistic attitude. And you kind of like at first feel like Mosscap is this like philosophical teacher for Dex, because they really always seem like they know exactly what to say. And then you realize that Mosscap is also not really sure what they're doing. They kind of on a whim decided to be the messenger to the humans, and then they get out here and realize they know nothing about humankind. It's been 300 years. I think the reason they put it on a moon is because it's a lot more believable that a moon's worth of people decided to do the nice thing.
Okay.
You know, it's a much smaller section of humanity, so it's not quite as crazy to think that they would be like, okay, robots, you deserve your own personhood. Like, get on out there. Do what you want.
They're like, Earth would never do that.
Oh no, Earth would never do that. Earth doesn't do that to other people, so.
Now that we're getting into the glam part, what is your usual daily glam?
Well, let's not say daily. Post-pandemic, it's really changed.
Yes.
I experiment a lot with lipsticks and eyeshadows. I don't do a lot with contouring or anything like that, just because it just is a lot of work. And lipsticks are like a lot of payoff for like a very small amount of work. And I really like fun colors. Like I have a lot of non-traditional lipstick colors. Like I have a gray one, a purple one, blue.
Very cool colors.
3 black lipsticks because I was searching for the perfect black lipstick.
Oh, what a cutie!
I can't see myself in the mirror. The makeup feels great. I will say I never wear fake eyelashes, so it feels like my bangs just like came down even lower because I can like see them in the top of my field of vision. Okay, so look a little bit more. As far as the book goes, I love this book. It's very different from her other series though. So if someone has read like her other collection of books, this is incredibly different. Those are set on like spaceships. There's a bunch of different alien species. Okay. I guess technically robots could be considered an alien species, but I would argue they're not because they're made by humans.
Okay, so I think that we are done. I went on a look kind of based on the story, the sun, nature, and I feel like it just goes really well with your whole vibe and the vibe of the book, which is, if you can refresh us. A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers, the first in the Monk and Robot series. And it is available at our library. It is. It's checked out. That's why I have this, because it's so popular. Yes, it's checked out, so you will, if you want to read it, you'll have to put it on reserve. So definitely try it out if you are looking for a new cozy philosophical read.
Yeah.
Well, we hope that y'all enjoyed this review, that y'all enjoyed this look, and we'll see you guys next time.